Thank you so much to you, Michael, to Irina and Kim and Anne for the organization of all this meeting. And I have to say thank you also to my friend Gordon Simmons, who helped me in translating all this lecture and preparing the speech. And I have to say it's a bit weird to be there alone in my room and be connected with many people at the same time. I think it's really an opportunity to create these spiritual airways. I begin by saying a few words about about how World Psychosynthesis was born. Anne has already said something. The day was chosen during the International Psychosynthesis Conference, which took place in Taormina 4 years ago, to symbolize the unity of purpose of all the centers, groups, and individuals of the world that resonate with the message of psychosynthesis. As we can read in the document, drawn up by Lucera Morino and Mike Malagreca, the proposal was created with the intention of promoting a greater awareness of belonging to a vast energy movement initiated by Roberto Assagioli, a greater connection, a mutual recognition and a synthesis between the different groups around the world, beyond the specific belonging and the focus on one of its different fields of application: psychotherapy, education, self-training, interpersonal, and social relationship. And finally, this day aims to promote reflection and meditation on how each of us can contribute to this work. Today, I will therefore share with you, during this lecture, my reflection on some of the guidelines. I have identified 7 points that can perhaps orient us. We will take a little break after the speech. Then we will take a moment to share some resonances, especially about the short imaginative exercise I have prepared and that Anne will propose to you during the speech. Then meditation for psychosynthesis in the world, and a final moment of sharing. I just want to say that in the next few days you will receive the PowerPoint I have prepared, also some papers, bibliographical information, so don't worry, you will get all you may need to go deep in the argument, in the subject. Let's start with the very first, sorry, I'm just trying to, yes, okay. Let's start with the words of Assagioli himself, who wrote in 1937, "It is urgent to establish spiritual airways between nations, institutions, movement, and across the continents. Let us give to this work comparatively at least as much energy, determination, desire, time, efforts as those who are given to establish airplane communication throughout the world." I personally found this quote very significant. It was chosen as the seed thought for today and introduces us immediately to the art of the psychosynthetic message, a real vocation to establish relationships, to connect different part entities in an harmonious way in order to create new reality. To this, I also want to add the importance of committing ourselves to recognize the profound interconnection that already characterize our world, both the external and the internal one, because one is the inevitable mirror of the other. The interrelation is already a reality that we often fail to grasp. We must therefore also train and modify our view. And finally, it is important that we learn to act in harmony with this reality, we must learn to give attention and energy to those forces capable of generating connections, exchanges, dialogue, and at the same time develop awareness of the drives to protect the personal good, to isolation and closure that are inevitably part of our human endowment, and commit ourselves to contain and transform these drives. This seems to me the fundamental proposition of psychosynthesis. It was a very urgent proposition in 1937 when Assagioli wrote this note. As well, we know it was the period of expansion of totalitarianism in Europe, but it is no less urgent today in this current world situation. In February, I was invited to London to give a speech at the second International Psychosynthesis Coaching Symposium. On that occasion, I began by saying that we are in an era of transition characterized by the profound changes that the unstoppable process of globalization brings with it. We may be witnessing the labor of giving birth to a consciousness with a planetary extension. I pointed out that we are facing not only several odd and absolutely not new issues like socioeconomic and gender inequalities, wars, mass migration, exploitation of childhood, intense climate changes, epidemics, and so on. But above all, we are facing the new global scope of these issues. It is this global impact, the substantial difference from the past. So it is no longer just about the good and health of individuals or particular group of individuals, but it is about the good and health of the entire human group and of all the living beings who inhabit this planet. This state of affairs has a profound effect. It reshapes our old needs and constellates new ones. So psychology, and with it the other scientific and humanistic disciplines, has the ethical task of confronting and questioning itself deeply on this state of affairs in order to offer visions and articulated, meditated answers. And it is here that the message of psychosynthesis reveals today, even more than in the past, its extreme topicality, its being a precious gift. I'll come back to that point later. Today, we unfortunately know very well that in those days of February, something was happening which we are still trying to understand the real extent of. I am obviously talking about the COVID-19 pandemic. Like everyone, I wondered about this epochal event, and among the many things highlighted by the Earth emergency, 3 in particular struck me more than others. The first, the now undoubted reality of the processes I mentioned earlier, globalization, and the strong and progressive increase in the interconnection that characterize it. Already 2000 years ago, Seneca said, "The earth is one country. We are waved from the same sea, leaves from the same tree, flowers from the same garden." But this pandemic has forced us to have a direct experience of this reality. Unfortunately, it has done so in a traumatic way with all its unwelcome implications. The pandemic, from the Greek pan, which means all, and demios, which mean people, concerns, in fact, all the people, all the inhabitants of planet Earth. The second aspect that struck me was the power and responsibility that each of us, like it or not, was called upon to assume in this scenario. Precisely by virtue of we are experiencing the ability that each individual has to concretely influence the global situation through their choices and actions. What we do, for example, respecting certain hygiene rule or not, has a specific effects on the spread of the contagion. And finally, the multiplicity of responses that have been observed, especially during the lockdown, have made me reflect. Some people have understandably felt lost, alone, and deeply uncomfortable, while others have relished the restrictive measures as a welcome break. Some have enthusiastically stressed the benefits of the emergency, even affirming the dawn of a new world. Others have shown themselves disillusioned and disenchanted. Still others have announced a dangerous collapse of our democratic society, and so on. In this regard, it came naturally to me to associate this multiplicity of reactions, responses, with those witnessed by Roberto Assagioli himself in his evocative work, Freedom in Jail. You know that Assagioli was Jewish and that during the Nazi fascism period he suffered persecution. In 1940, he was even arrested on charging of being a pacifist and an internationalist, and then imprisoned. And now we will hear from Michael Volde's voice. Michael, are you there? What Assagioli wrote about that experience, and you will see how well these responses relate to what we are observing during the pandemic period. So please, Michael.
Freedom. I realized that I was free to take one or another attitude towards the situation, to give one or another value to it, to utilize it or not in one or another way.
Okay. This is the dimension of self-awareness or self-consciousness speaking.
I could rebel internally and curse, or I could submit, passively vegetating, or I could indulge in an unhealthy pleasure of self-pity and assume the martyr's role.
And these are the reactions of the pre-personal level, the survival responses: fight, flight, submit, freeze.
Or I could take the situation in a sporting way and with a sense of humor, considering it as an interesting experience. I could make of it a rest cure or a period of intense thinking, either about personal matters, reviewing my past life and pondering on it.
And these are the responses of the personal level.
Or about scientific and philosophical problems. Or I could take advantage of the condition in order to submit myself to a definite training of psychological faculties. Or finally, as a spiritual retreat.
And these responses are from the transpersonal dimension or level.
I had the clear, sure perception that this was entirely my own affair and that I was free to choose any or several of these attitudes and activities, that this choice would have definite and avoidable effects, which I could foresee and for which I was fully responsible. There was no doubt in my mind about this essential freedom and freedom of power, and the inherent privileges and responsibility, a responsibility toward myself, toward my fellow mankind, and towards life itself or God.
And this is again the dimension of self-awareness and will speaking. Thank you, Michael. Thank you for your help. So, reflecting on these wonderful words of Assagioli, I asked myself, who are those who, in critical life situations, are able to access the freedom to choose and to activate from among the various possible responses, the most mature, creative, and adaptive ones? What characteristics do these people have? Emerson once wrote, "When there is no vision, people perish." I found precisely in this idea of a vision one of the possible answers to my questions. In extreme situations, individuals who are able to access the freedom to choose the most courageous and mature answers seems to have an important characteristic in common. They are all supported and guided by a broad, clear, and inspiring vision. As I mentioned, I thought about what Assagioli wrote in the passage Michael has just read. And I also thought about what Viktor Frankl, Nelson Mandela, Mahatma Gandhi, Etty Hillesum, and others witnessed during their personal lockdowns. From all this testimony, we know that those who have a bold vision of the human being and of life have a better chance of surviving and or experiencing positively even very intense crises. Having a vision that gives meaning to our experience is therefore of the utmost importance, especially in difficult times. Visions are powerful because their language is symbolic. Images and symbols are in fact accumulators of certain energy charges. They are transformers or channels of psychic energies and favor their integration. Visions are able to set in motion intense creative and transformative processes in the unconscious. Trying to influence the unconscious with rational procedures is ineffective and unsuitable. To do this, we must instead use its own language, the symbolic one, and nothing conveys it more effectively than a vision. And visions are powerful because they know how to guide us beyond the automatic and predetermined reaction of the pre-personal level, rebel, curse, submit, passively vegetate, beyond the already known of the personal level, and towards new possibility, new lands to explore. That's why visions are like the stars for sailors. They orient us and accompany us along our journey. They help us find and rediscover the route and give us the strength to maintain it despite moments of discouragement and loneliness, obstacles and failures. Visions can motivate us and move us emotionally. They awake our desires, evoke the emotions and feelings corresponding to them, inspire our dreams, and infuse us with the energy to commit ourselves to translating them into reality. This is why it is so important that we ask ourselves, will we be able to distill from the painful experience we are going through, the pandemic, the precious gift that it is able to offer us? Will we be able to derive a positive, bold and courageous vision from it? A vision that we will continue to cultivate in a free and conscious way, even when the grip of the shadow has loosened, if it will. And above all, will we be able to choose among the various possible responses of this planetary crisis, the most mature and creative one? This is the urgent challenge that awaits us, and we must take it up with courage, because on the answers that each of us will give to these questions depends not only the outcome of the current pandemic, but above all, the quality of life of the entire planet. And it is here that psychosynthesis reveals today its extreme topicality, its relevance. In fact, the precious gift that it offers us, what most characterizes it, is its systemic and complex vision of life and of the human being, which are considered in all their aspects and above all in the relationships between these different aspects. It is an integral vision inspired by the guiding principle of all psychosynthesis, the general principle of organization, integration, and synthesis. It is a vision that we greatly need, and meditating on it together can be useful, both to orient ourselves in these difficult times and to reflect on the work we are invited to do on the occasion of this World Day of Psychosynthesis. Let us see some of the points that I have identified and which it seems to me can perhaps help us in promoting a greater sense of belonging, connection, and mutual recognition between the different groups and units of psychosynthesis around the world. First of all, let's try to look at psychosynthesis as a living idea, a vital subject, an open system in the making, an organism that develops and grows and which, in order to continue to do so, must feed on the constant relationship with the environment that surrounds it. Assagioli, in fact, stated that psychosynthesis can be indicated and not defined, because all definitions are limited and limiting. Why this distinction between defining and indicating psychosynthesis? I believe it is precisely because we can define objects which are inert, dead, living subjects, instead, which are indeed alive and vital, can only be indicated, intuited, never fully grasped once and for all. This first point, psychosynthesis as a living idea, is fundamental not only to better understand the message and nature of psychosynthesis in and of itself, but also the vision of the human being that it offers us. In this vision, a very central aspect is precisely the distinction, the disidentification of the subject, the self that we are, the consciousness that contains and experience objects, and the objects, the subpersonality, the parts, the various psychic contents. While I was preparing this meeting, I was looking for an image that could represent the message and nature of psychosynthesis in an evocative way. But before I share with you the image presented itself to me, I want to invite you to do a short imaginative exercise so each of you can find your own personal image of psychosynthesis. I now invite Anne Brand to guide us through the meditation. Wait about 10 minutes.
So before we start the meditation, I suggest that you turn off your cameras so you create a private space for yourself while we do this visualization. So let's take a comfortable position, neither too rigid nor too relaxed. You can close your eyes or keep them open. Lower them a little, choosing according to what encourages contact with yourself. We focus our attention on the breath, the air that enters through our nostrils and the air that comes out. And as we exhale, we let go as well as we can of all muscle tensions. We allow ourselves all those little movements of the body, especially in the neck and shoulder area that makes us most comfortable. Exhale. We let go. Together with the muscular tensions, also any possible tensions on an emotional level. And also any worries, distractions on a mental level. Exhale. We free ourselves from anything excessive. At least for the space of this exercise. We let go of everything that is not useful. Now we shift our attention from breathing out to breathing in. By inhaling, we deepen the contact with ourselves. Taking root in our inner center. By inhaling, we become more present in our body. Sitting here, now. Our breathing body. We feel more present, energetic, and vital. Inhale. We become more spacious and welcoming, even on an emotional level. More loving and connected with everything around us. Inhale. We feel more lucid and awake. Our mind becomes clear, bright. The vision is clean. Inhale. More and more deeply rooted in our inner center. Now we can perceive next to us, as if one large space is gathering us all together, the presence of the other participants in this meeting. And all of those who participate in other ways in this World Day of Psychosynthesis. And widening further, let us connect with all those who work in the psychosynthetic field in the world. Let the presence of all these people warm our hearts. Finally, let us connect with the very essence of psychosynthesis itself, with this living and life-giving idea. And now we let appear in our consciousness an image that symbologically represents psychosynthesis as a living entity. We take the time to observe this figure with curiosity and openness. This image what characteristics does it show? In which environment or landscape is it inserted? What does it do? Is this figure involved in any activity? If yes, with what attitude does it carry out that activity? Now, let's get ready to bring our consciousness back to the waking level. We regain contact with our body. Sitting here. Now, let's take a few activating breaths. Let's start moving our fingers and toes. Let's rotate our ankles, the wrists, and if you want to, you can stretch a little bit as you are waking up from a good restful sleep. Now, open up your eyes and come back to the room.
Nation, desire, time, and effort to establish spiritual airways. That is, to create from the colorful chaos of the partial elements of the objects at their disposal, exchanges, dialogue, balance, harmony, new reality, and beauty. This tireless work of weaving has the ultimate purpose of leading us to an ever fuller realization of our true identity, of our authentic self, that goes hand in hand with the deepening of the experience of the substantial interrelation of all that is within us and outside of us. In my opinion, promoting this experience has never been so urgent and significant as in this particular historical period. The shift of attention from the parts to the relations between the parts clarifies our vision of the common good and develops our ability to act accordingly. Let's now see how does this weaving work actually happen and what are the attitudes that we can cultivate to actively collaborate in this work of connection and to encourage the further development of psychosynthesis. As I have already said in London, the first is undoubtedly interdisciplinary openness. Psychosynthesis can in fact be indicated above all as a movement, a tendency, a goal which translates into an attitude and a slow conquest towards organization, integration, and synthesis in every field. First of all, in the vast field of human knowledge. As psychosynthesists, we are called to feed a constant dialogue between different disciplines, point of view, between different approaches. The aim is to overcome the fragmentation of knowledge. That is, we must actively encourage the integration of psychology with the other sciences and with philosophy, religion, spirituality, and art. By doing so, we gradually build an ever more complete overview of that wonderful phenomenon that is the human being and of life more generally. The tension towards integration, organization, and synthesis must then also be expressed in the more specific field of psychology itself. As psychosynthesists, we must establish relationships of appropriate collaboration between the different point of view and partial systems. We must strive to recognize that every school, movement, or technique has its merits and its limitation, and it is therefore advisable to know, to appreciate, and make use of the greatest number of them. The vocation of psychosynthesis is therefore to promote, in addition to the interdisciplinary dialogue, an integrative approach and international and intercultural exchanges within the same psychology. Assagioli spoke of promoting a synthesis between American psychology, which has always stood out for the search for active, effective, and creative techniques and tools, European psychology, so attentive to the dynamics of the deep unconscious and the relational ones, and Eastern psychology, which for millennia has investigated the transpersonal dimensions and the realization of the self. Today we can certainly add to this list the two other continents, the indigenous and shamanic psychology, the ethnopsychiatric approach. Most likely, Assagioli's intent was to create a psychology with a planetary breathing, reach. This is also very relevant today. So the vision of the kind of relationship that psychosynthesis should have with the environment from which it draws the nourishment it needs to continue to develop, it's truly very broad and inclusive. However, we must keep in mind that alongside this vocation to dialogue and alongside the integration of many external contributions, there is a central and original core that forms its essence. This is important in order not to present a distorted view of it and not to fall into the trap of the heterogeneous eclecticism. The central and original core, as you know, consists in a specific vision of the human being represented mainly in the two diagrams of the egg and the star of psychological function, and by the 7 fundamental experiences that constitute the sine qua non of the psychosynthetic path. The experience of disidentification, the experience of the I or personal self, the experience of will, the ideal model, synthesis, the superconscious, and the experience of transpersonal self. Do you see how much the art of psychosynthesis consists of an experiential dimension? And in fact, the relationship between existential experience and theories relating to the different fields of knowledge mentioned above, science, philosophy, spirituality, art, psychology itself, is another important point. Intellectual knowledge, theoretical reflection, although necessary and very, very important, must always be in the service of a direct existential experience. That is, they must alleviate the suffering of individuals and promote real processes of harmonization and growth. Otherwise, they are sterile intellectualism, a dead letter. In Italian, we said aria fritta, fried air. Not for nothing, Assagioli said, psychosynthesis is a life practice, and said about his own way of proceeding, I have tried to be intelligent without being intellectual. Psychosynthesis is most interested in what is potentially able to unite all human beings, at least as many of them as possible. Then we can perhaps identify as one of its most specific objects of study the universal archetypal dimension of human existence, what Bergson called the immediate data of consciousness. I am referring, for example, to facing our limits with impotence and to experience power, will, and courage. I am referring to our need for security and to the urge to heroic, ethical, and humanitarian action, to the suffering of loss, and to the search for freedom and happiness, to aesthetic experiences, artistic creation, great scientific intuition, to the urge to protect oneself, and to the urge to grow and transcend oneself, to the experience of birth and death, to solitude, and to love, solidarity, brotherhood. It would be difficult, but very interesting, to complete this list. The importance attributed to existential experience with respect to theorization leads us to the next and second to last point of my speech, the question of language. What kind of language is able to mirror the deeply inclusive nature of psychosynthesis, and thus foster mutual understanding and recognition within it and its further development and diffusion? Assagioli himself had wondered about this thorny issue and was well aware of the misunderstandings and difficulties, which he called serious, posed by the use of words, especially when you want to describe a complex and elusive reality like that of the human psyche. He was a passionate scholar of etymology and semantic, and had therefore fully grasped the symbolic value of language, its power to veil and confuse reality or reveal it. We too are called to reflect on this issue and to take great care in choosing the word we use. Are there any criteria we can refer to? First of all, it seems important to me that we develop the ability to distinguish the map, meaning the different belief system and theoretical formulations, from the territory, the reality of the experience that the maps want to indicate. Then I believe that it is even more important that we commit ourselves, when we are working on the maps, to choose those words that best respect the criterion of universality. That is, those words that can be received by the largest possible number of individuals, regardless their different groups of belonging, ethnic, cultural, philosophical, spiritual, and so on. These criteria are particularly relevant for a psychological approach, which, like ours, integrates the transpersonal spiritual dimension. They help us to avoid the temptation of literal thought, which always brings with it misunderstandings and sectarianism. They help us to practice this identification, to be polyglot, psychologically and spiritually, to be skilled translators. Assagioli himself proposed the empirical, concrete and pragmatic language of science as the official language of psychosynthesis. And I do not have the impression that in this present historical moment, we have a more functional reference system available for the goal of creating a common ground of understanding that allows for dialogue beyond the particularities and personal beliefs. The scientific metaphor still seems to be the most suitable one to support the universal vocation of psychosynthesis and to favor its further development, whilst still remaining a symbol. I am almost done, but let me go for a moment back to the importance that a bold and meaningful vision, such as that proposed by psychosynthesis, can have, both to guide us in these difficult pandemic times and to reflect on the work that we are invited to do on this World Day. I said that visions are powerful, and they are, provided that, as Bauman said, they lead us to experience the abyss that exists between what we continue to do and what we should do, and on a collective level, between what matters to those who decide and what is truly important. We psychosynthesists should know this very well. What makes a vision truly such is its transformative power. An authentic vision is rooted in the here and now, in the real. It leads, it induces action, it activates our will, it moves our being in a specific direction. Otherwise, it's just a daydream, an illusion. that perhaps satisfy some of our desires, even noble ones, but which does not produce integrity. This is why our vision must be trifocal. That is, it is necessary to see and keep in mind the distant goal, the purpose, then have a vision of the intermediate stages that go from the point of departure to the point of arrival, and finally the immediate perception of the next step to take. The global transformation we need will not happen without the commitment of each one of us. It requires real and radical awareness. That's it. I have concluded my speech. Thank you for your patience.
But before I share what we did in the group, which was so nice, really welcoming group, I would like to thank Petra for this extraordinary meditation, which I really enjoyed. And thank you for it. Really refreshed me. I had a very hard day today. It was an interesting day. So to the group we had, I had Mary, Nanne, Tina, Lisbeth, and someone I think is Ilva, and then it was me. And I'm making a synthesis of it all. Everyone found some inspiration in the talk given by Petra, inspiration for their work, and so also for renewing their energy to fight depression, and their work is, as an example, in unconditional love and forgiveness, writing a book on aging, reconnecting with the field of psychotherapy, and realizing in a new manner that we always start everything over and over again, and that is life. And so do I. That's it. Thank you, Petra.
Thank you, Isabel. Thank you so much.
So anyone else? When we were planning this meeting, I told Petra she was afraid that there would be too many discussions, too many people wanting to discuss. And I told them, no, we are talking to Swedes here.
No one will speak.
I can talk because the overall feeling is it's so nice to connect again, even though we do it in this way. I have felt a little bit alone doing my work at home, or now taking clients outside or by phone. So I thank you very much for all that. And I think we will, the image I got was that we are giving or showing the light that lighten up every person's own way. So if we can help them get their light, then they can see their way more clearly and be more themselves. So I hope I can contribute to that in one way or another. Thank you very much, Petra, Mikael, Anne, and all the rest of you.
Thanks. Thanks to you. Thank you. Someone else who want to share, perhaps at the end of the last meditation of the meditation for psychosynthesis in the world, there was a suggestion to identify a small step, a little act of will that you can do today or tomorrow to start. Someone want to share this?
I want to share this.
Raffaella, ciao.
Ciao, Petra. This meditation was exactly what I needed at this time in my life. So thank you. And my step for today is staying here till the end and not running away, even because time is over and I've got other things to do. So I'm staying here. And my word is yes, which is lots of meaning for me. So thank you very much. And thank you for the organizers, naturally. Thank you.
Thank you, Raffaella.
Yes, I was imagining like my screen with Zoom meeting next year. And I saw the participants, and it was like more than 1 million people. I don't know why, but it was like, it was my vision of like worldwide connections, connective day, I don't know, the next year. And then what about my personal part of this? Tomorrow I have my clients, and tonight I'm gonna feed my daughter, and it's also a very important part. So I can start tonight to talk to her about the psychosynthesis and explain her more. And tomorrow I have my clients, and it will be my way to how to say bidra to someone who speaks Swedish also. Contribute, yes, thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
To the psychosynthesis, to spread this idea of psychosynthesis.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Thank you, Irina.
So what Kim was suggesting from the group that we were sharing in was that if you would like to paint or in any way create your figure that you received, you could take a picture and email it to this address, and we could put it all together as a mandala Peter suggested. So you're more than welcome to do that. Or you can email to Petra also. I'm sure you can do that as well. So, but I think this is all for today, and thank you very much, Petra, for having this speech today, and it's been very informative, and I think we all leave this meeting with a new bit of fresh energy and trying to send out the message of psychosynthesis in new ways from today and so on. So thank you very much.
Thanks to you again, Anne, and thank you to Irina, Kim, Michael for the organization, and yes, good work to all of us.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye
Bye-bye.
bye. Bye. I'd like to ask Petra and Anders to stay for some kind of private reflection after the meeting.
Okay.
To the rest of you, I wish you a very good night. And it's been wonderful, really wonderful. So thank you very much. And as someone said in the chat, I'm already looking forward to next time.
So am I.
So bye-bye everybody, and good night.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye.